What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Season 9, Episode 7 of HTF Bets. I'm your host, Nick Cohen, and we have a great show for you. Honestly, as always, we start with doing Andrew's fantasy football ad drops. Tyler will give us some fantasy basketball sleepers, and then, as always, we'll finish with our surefire pick of the week. And one of us did hit, so don't go anywhere because HTF Bets starts right now. And welcome back. To my right is Tyler Brownrigg. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Back from the hurricane. We hope everyone watching in Florida is safe. But yeah, I'm excited to be back here in the studio for bets.
Yes, absolutely. And then to my left, making his bets debut, is Justin Barnes. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. The Dolphins didn't lose yesterday, so
always a
good
plus.
day.
Always lightens your mood a little bit. So we are going to be doing our fantasy football ad drops, and doing that is Andrew. How are you doing? And then just get into your list.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I got a little scared that you wouldn't for a second when you threw it out to me, but I have that fantasy ad drop list right next to me. On the ads for the week, I have Christian Watson and Demario Douglas, and then for the drops, I have Jerry Jeudy, Jawan Jennings, and Rome Odunze. If I could quickly go over the ads, I think that Christian Watson is one of the more underrated receivers in fantasy football. He's only rostered in 44% of leagues currently, which is kind of insane to me because going into the season, you kind of expected him to be like the Green Bay's wide receiver #1. And obviously he's had injury concerns and he's had like different injuries plaguing him throughout the year, but he's been one of the better receivers in the NFL. Maybe not like overall receivers, but his average 22 yards a catch this year, and he had 15.8 fantasy points last game. So I think that he should be on a lot of different rosters. The fact that he's only in 44% of leagues is kind of crazy to me. And second, I have Demario Douglas. He's only rostered in 21% of leagues, which it makes sense because the Patriots have been so bad this season, but Jacoby Brissett is not their quarterback anymore. Drake May has stepped up, and although he didn't have the greatest game in the world, he did have over 200 yards passing, and I think that opens up the offense for a lot of different things, especially for Demario Douglas, as they're going to be behind in a lot of games. The Patriots honestly are not a very good team. They're probably going to be in the top 5 for draft position, so they're going to have to be coming behind in a lot of these games. And the fact that they are going to be coming behind in a lot of these games means that they're going to be passing the ball, which means that there's going to be more targets for Demario Douglas. He's had 9 targets in each of the last 2 games, which is kind of insane for a wide receiver on the Patriots right now. And I think he's going to be like one of Drake May's favorite options. So those are for my ads. And do you guys have anything to say about that?
Not too much. You kind of corrected yourself a little bit on the Christian Watson, saying he's one of the better players in the league. But, I kind of think it isn't an unfair comparison to say he's kind of like Gabe Davis before this season. Gabe Davis has been kind of a stinker this season. But, beforehand, they're, major deep threats. Not the best route running, but I would say they're kind of similar. Do we kind of somewhat agree a little bit, Justin?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know if I would add him just yet. I mean, he's only had 8 catches the entire season so far, and just statistically speaking, that's not a lot. He is a great receiver, and he should be getting more targets, but I wouldn't add him just yet, even though he did have a good game last week.
That's fair. And
I would say the big scare about Christian Watson is you have Devontae Wicks and Romeo Doubs in that lineup for the Packers. Wicks, who has been amazing in fantasy, and Doubs, who just had coming off a great week. So it's tough to say that he's going to get his share of targets right away. If you're looking for maybe a different wide receiver to add, I would say Juju Smith-Schuster at Kansas City. He had an amazing performance in their last game, 7 catches, 130 yards for 20 PPR points. So maybe if you're maybe a little hesitant on Christian Watson, you don't believe Andrew fully, I would go with Juju instead. But Douglas, I love the Douglas pickup.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people thought he was underrated and did end up rostering him during fantasy drafts, and then, the first 4 or 5 weeks he kind of wasn't great. But so if Drake May ends up targeting him more, I do like this pick. Yeah.
I like the pick too, especially because as a rookie quarterback, you tend to lean on a particular target. And last game was Drake May's debut, and he leaned on Demario Douglas a lot. And I think if that's a trend going forward, he's going to get a lot of targets.
Absolutely. So what are some of your drops, Andrew?
Yeah, if I could go back to the ads for half a second, I will say Christian Watson has been injured for part of the season, and he the wide receiver competition is a thing, but I think that what I meant to say was he was projected to take a step up this year as like Green Bay's possible wide receiver number 1, and that wide receiver room, like while they do have wide receivers, I don't know that they're the flashiest names in the world, and I think that Christian Watson is a great target. So that's what I had to say on Christian Watson.
For sure.
For like my drops, I have Jerry Jeudy, Juwan Jennings, and Rome Odunze. Jerry Jeudy has been a little bit of a disappointment his kind of whole career, which is a little sad to say because he won the Biletnikoff at Alabama, and he was one of like the star receivers coming out of Alabama. He was a first-round draft talent, and unfortunately, he hasn't essentially lived up to that hype. He joined the Browns this offseason, and he has one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL like this season. So he's just not worth a roster spot in my opinion. He has had one catch he's had one catch in each of the last 2 games, which obviously isn't great. And I think there's a lot of different wide receivers that are on the waiver wire right now that are potentially better targets than him. I also think that Juwan Jennings and Rome Odunze are kind of in like the same position, given the fact that they have deep wide receiver rooms and the fact that they both had one really good game that has set them up for maybe a little bit higher up in the rankings than they should be. But really, Juwan Jennings had one game where he had 11 catches for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns, which is so many. But then when you really put into perspective, Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle even are going to get the majority of the targets, and I just don't see him having many good games from here on out. He is currently the wide receiver number 13, which is genuinely crazy to me because besides that 43-point game, he's averaging less than 10 points a game, and he's not very consistent. So Juwan Jennings is on my drop list, and he's rostered in over 60% of leagues right now. So I don't know. He's just not one of my favorite targets. And then for Rome Odunze, he also had a really good week where you could say he had a breakout week in week 3 and then has just kind of come back to earth since then. He has Keenan Allen and obviously like a deeper wide receiver room on the Bears, as well as DeAndre Swift in the backfield. Between touches from DeAndre Swift and like not a lot of targets from Rome Odunze, I don't think that he's worth being rostered. He's only averaging 8 points per game in a PPR league, and that's just not great for someone like for a receiver that you would want to be counting on kind of consistently. So I think that again, there's just better like options on the waiver wire, and I don't see it wasting a spot on him is quite necessary, honestly.
I like those a lot. I actually have already dropped Juwan Jennings in one of my leagues that I had picked him up in, so I like that a lot. Any other thoughts on those players?
The biggest thing with Rome Odunze, I think, is the one who stands out to me is like I feel like his breakout that one game week 3 is a bit of fool's gold. Keenan Allen was injured for the Bears.
Yeah.
So honestly, rookie receivers, it's tough to really like bet on them in fantasy wise. Obviously, right, we've seen Malik Neighbors and what he's been doing with the Giants, but now he's been out 2 weeks with injury. So rookie receivers, there's always that like inconsistency that they have week in, week out.
And Keenan Allen had 2 touchdowns this weekend. So he's back. He's ready to go. Rome Odunze, I think, is a good drop. Any thoughts on Jerry Jeudy being on that list, Justin?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Jerry Jeudy, I think he's a good receiver. I think he has a lot of talent coming out of Alabama. I understand it's been like 4 years, but he's just never had a good quarterback, right? And if you're a receiver, you're reliant on a quarterback to get you the ball. And he's had Russell Wilson in a fluke year and Deshaun Watson.
I believe also.
Drew Lock.
Yeah, and now Deshaun. It's just
whatever.
He really has not been set up for success.
Whatever carousel of quarterbacks Denver's gone through. Sorry, Matthew Bracker. Jerry Jeudy's he hasn't had a good quarterback, so I would say stay away from him.
Yeah, 100%. Really quickly, I wanted to give myself a little shout out. Well, actually, us. We are battling in fantasy this week. I'm down by 12 points currently, and you also have Josh Allen.
And you have
However,
Cook and Wilson.
I do have James Cook and Garrett Wilson. My thought process is the Jets' defense is really good. Maybe Josh Allen will get shut down. Granted, that might also mean James Cook will. And I also don't like Aaron Rodgers, so I'm kind of scared for that matchup. But either way, it's been a fun series. I'm projected to lose by a singular point. So that'll come down to the wire. And then finally,
I really need this win.
One secret little addition that I think is smart, just because I have some secret sources over in Tampa. I've heard that Rashad White, his foot injury is not looking amazing. And Sean Tucker, rookie out of Syracuse this year, he went off yesterday. 14 rushes, 136 yards, a touchdown, 3 receptions, 56 receiving yards, and another touchdown. Like, are you kidding me? Just sitting on waivers. I think in a deep league, he could be added. Bucky Irving still had a great game, but I just want to give him a little shout out. But that is it for this segment. Thank you very much, Justin. Thank you, Andrew, for those ad drops. But after this commercial, we will be doing some fantasy basketball, so don't go anywhere.
I'm going to the NFL season opener. Baltimore Ravens at the Kansas City Chiefs, September 5th, Thursday Night Football. I am taking the Baltimore Ravens at plus 130 to win this. Kansas City, when they were the season opener last year, they lost that game. Historically, they're not that great in this position.
I have Chuba Hubbard as like one of my drops. Unfortunately, he's in an offense where like he just won't be getting any carries because of how bad the offense is. He's one of the people I'd drop like as one of the fastest drops in fantasy football.
This league has not been what I thought it would be, okay? I thought I would be undefeated. I walked away from that draft. I got Tyreek Hill at number 6, and I thought I won.
So I guess with that in mind, I mentioned it previously.
You're doing.
U squared.
I'm so excited to have you back. I feel like we should switch seats, but just such a legacy. Granted, I'm already beating you in Surefire Picks, but how have you been and hosting Main Show?
I've been good. Main show's been a lot of fun. I'm just happy to be back. Again, shout out Capstone, but happy to be here on a Monday, and I'm excited to talk some hoops.
Absolutely. So this segment is going to be our fantasy basketball. Some sleepers. Tyler will have a list of his top 5 fantasy sleepers for this upcoming season. We'll try and have a variety in average draft position, and will be based on standard ESPN league scoring. So, Tyler, just go ahead and get right into it.
All right, so I will get right into my list here. To start it off, I have Chris Paul for the San Antonio Spurs being the top. Now, I understand, right, Chris Paul, he's getting older. He's getting up there in age, but now he's in San Antonio. The biggest thing, assists. That's what he's going to be bringing. He averaged 6.8 assists per game last season. I expect that number to go way up. One reason, Victor Wembanyama. Victor finally has a point guard who knows to throw lobs to him. He will understand that, and we'll finally see that. Next up on my list, my pick from one of our earlier episodes for Most Improved Player of the Year, Jalen Johnson on the Atlanta Hawks. Like I said back then, a few episodes ago, I expect a big breakout year for him. DeJounte Murray got traded off the team. He was averaging 16 points, just under 9 rebounds, and just under 4 assists. I expect that to go way up. He's going to get a lot more scoring opportunities. His shooting efficiency above 50% from the field. He will be getting a lot more touches this season. And then third, who I'm surprised by his ADP at 139th, Jonathan Kuminga on the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors are rebuilding. No Klay Thompson. Draymond and Klay aren't getting any younger. And Kuminga is the only real young talent on this team that's been a bit of a bright spot for them. And he's been steadily improving year after year. And now in a season with low expectations, you're not really expected to make the playoffs at all, this can be a team that I think where he's going to get a lot more touches. We're going to see him maybe a bit more defensively. He's going to be getting more minutes because they're going to lose a lot, the Warriors, this year, which we're not accustomed to, but we will see a lot of losing from them. So Kuminga, low expectations with the season. I think it's great for a young guy to have some success. And then now my 2 kind of deep sleeper picks here. First, Cam Thomas on the Brooklyn Nets. If there's one thing I can tell you about Cam Thomas is that he is not afraid to shoot the basketball. Averaged 18 points per game last year. He is a high-volume shooter. And no Mikal Bridges anymore. He got traded. He's back with his Nova boys in New York. And the big thing about him that I think is a scare for people, right, is his inefficiency shooting the ball historically, especially from 3. But that's been going up, and now he's going to be getting a lot more touches. Now, obviously, you're not going to see anything from the assist category or even from rebounds, right? that's going to be a bit of a struggle for him, which those are worth a lot more points. That's more valuable in fantasy basketball. But a high volume, 20 points per game average scorer, which I think Cam can do this season, that has its own really high upside. And then finally, rounding off the list, Marcus Smart for the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm surprised his ADP is so low, sitting at 234th. He led the NBA in steals per game last season, averaged over 2. And this will be a Grizzlies team that's a bit more up and coming now, right, with Ja Morant coming back healthy. But you are not drafting Marcus Smart for his offensive capabilities, all right? That's just, he averages under, I believe, 3 assists. His scoring is around 14. You want those defensive stats, right, that are worth 2 to 4 points depending on your league's rule set. And 2 steals a game, that is huge for fantasy scoring. As a good role player near the bottom of your lineup, he'd be a great late round pick. But that rounds out the list. So guys, tell me, what are your thoughts on my list?
Yeah, so just a couple. Marcus Smart, he absolutely burned me last year in fantasy basketball. Granted, he was injured quite a bit, but the Grizzlies just kind of were banged up as a whole with Ja Morant and the rest of the boys. So I probably won't be drafting Marcus Smart just because he's on my do not draft list.
How much were you expecting from Marcus Smart last year?
I liked him a lot because, listen, he went to the Grizzlies.
Okay.
I was thinking he'd be playing alongside Ja. Obviously, things happen.
Desmond Bane's there. I don't see that happening at all.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
He also had a career high in points and steals last year, and he's like a former Defensive Player of the Year, so that is a crazy stat that he had his career high in steals. He's not a big blocks guy, but he has a lot of defensive pressure. He had a career high in steals, and like the year that he didn't win Defensive Player of the Year, so I thought that was impressive. Granted, he only played 20 games, but like Marcus Smart, I think is like a great late round pickup.
I think so too. Just like considering the fact that he's listed as 234th in ADP. So not just that, but he picks up like a lot of stats, which again, this is about fantasy, that's what matters. He picks up a lot of points, a lot of assists. We saw that in the 2022 playoff run that he had, and additionally in the 2021 run that was cut short, I believe in the first round to KD's Nets. But yeah, he picks up the ball. He provides a lot of playmaking to the respective offense he's on, and that's something that could pan out well for you. And considering Ja Morant only played 9 games last season, and I think we're already getting some questions about his health returning into this one, he could be a little bit more high value than you'd expect.
But Marcus Smart's also getting up there in age.
He
could
is.
also continue to have injuries. We'll see. I personally won't be drafting him, but it sounds like you guys might. So.
I don't mind it.
Okay. How about Chris Paul? I like the pick a lot. I think 87.
87's kind of high, yeah.
Yep. Completely agree. Like, he could very easily average 9 assists a game, but I don't know if the points will be there as much. Any thoughts on Chris Paul?
Yeah, I think the main point that Tyler made, as well as what I'm assuming we're all kind of thinking, is the fact that he's going to be arguably having the best lob threat of his career, despite the fact that he was a centerpiece of that Lob City Clippers team. But I think, like, again, outside of the assists and the fact that we've seen a couple good, like, moving pull-up mid-range shots out of him in preseason, I don't know how much he's going to contribute considering probably, like, the lack of minutes. Maybe he gets hurt. Again, he's, like, one of the 5 oldest players in the NBA right now. I don't know how much they're going to contribute. You got some young guys coming up on the Spurs as well that I'm sure they would want to develop. And yeah, I think outside of the assist, there's not too much upside on this pick, especially for being 87th.
I don't really see Chris Paul because in terms of, like, I understand the minutes concern because especially in Golden State, right, he had some injury is there, but I feel like we're kind of forgetting what Chris Paul did later in his career and how he just turned teams around. You look at the Thunder when he was there, the Suns, right? And his just, also another thing, he averages over a steal per game for his career, right? So that's another valuable stat adding to it. And it's just, and I don't see his role as the starting point guard threatened in any way. Jeremy Shohan is not going to touch the point guard position if Greg Popovich can help it. And obviously they traded away Trey Jones, right? So Chris Paul just seems to be the de facto guy for point guard here. For the Spurs.
Stephon Castle was also one of my favorite players in this year's draft.
I don't think anyone's touching Chris Paul as a starter right now, but I don't think he's going to be like the primary minutes guy, at least at the point guard position. You mentioned Stephon Castle. He's probably going to be taking up that role eventually, kind of thing.
He'll be a great mentor.
Absolutely,
as well.
yeah. I think Chris Paul could start the game, but I don't know if he's going to finish it off. I don't know if he's going to play the majority of the minutes, and for that I'm kind of...
I completely agree. I wanted to talk a little bit about Cam Thomas. Tyler said it exactly. He shoots so much. He can score so many points. And just looking at like the depth chart of Brooklyn, there's no other guys there to compete. Like this is the leading contender for the #1 pick to get Cooper Flag next year. Like that'll be a great combo. But Cam Thomas, I think him being drafted where he's being drafted is a great steal. I also drafted him last year, just saying that's at 213. I think that's a steal. Would you like to talk about Jalen Johnson at all? The second highest drafted player on this list at 97.
Sure. I mean, I think that Tyler's exactly right with what he was saying. He has him as his, like most improved player.
Yep.
And I think that he's exactly right with that. He's definitely going to be in the running for it, and I think that he would take a huge step up offensively, and just in general, he plays great defense as well. He gives you the upside with steals and blocks, and obviously his offensive potential is there as well. He's not a big guy for like assists, but he can also grab you a couple boards a game. So at his ADP, I think it might be a little bit of a reach, but I think he's like a solid pick there.
I personally love the pickup. Tyler, this is my favorite one that you've had. I understand he's the second highest one. He's 97th. But looking at how the offense in Atlanta is kind of starting to build itself up this year, it reminds me a bit, and I hate to bring the NFL into an NBA segment, but like how the Buffalo Bills are structured right now, and like a less is more kind of offense. You don't have too many mouths to feed. You don't have too many, you don't have to force the ball too much, and that's the last thing you want to do if you're in this case Trae Young or Josh Allen for the Bills. I think Jalen Johnson's in a perfect position to not only improve his scoring and just his offensive abilities, but I think he could potentially be Trae Young's greatest teammate ever because DeJounte Murray might be that guy right now.
What about like John Collins?
Clint Capella?
Clint Capella was really good on that.
Clint
was, but like,
great on the Hawks. He was
these
on the playoff team that went to the conference finals.
I don't know. That might be a little
and then
bit
what
of a
happened,
stretch.
Tyler? And then what happened?
We can't talk about Jalen Johnson too long. And then Kuminga, he's like such a question mark. He has been so much potential, but like we don't really know. So I mean,
I like it.
Yeah, I don't hate it.
No Klay
Still
Thompson.
a little bit risky. You're right about that. That's the first time. Although Klay Thompson's been injured in previous seasons.
I think he's like the main young Warriors player that is leaning more towards when he's going to develop and not if.
That's very fair. Very fair. That is going to do it for this segment, though. Thank you very much, Tyler, for these picks. It was awesome having you back. So,
Awesome to be back.
yeah, but that's going to be it. After this commercial, we'll be Surefire Picks of the Week, so don't go anywhere.
So I guess with that in mind, I mentioned it previously, but I'm saying that Jacksonville is going to make the playoffs. One of the most wealthy quarterbacks in the NFL, and that basically means you're in okay, let's win now alongside Trevor Lawrence. But I think it could make it to the playoffs.
And so I have the Rams winning this one, 27-23. Yeah, I think the Lions are just going to be a little too comfortable. Week 1, they're hosting, a lot of energy.
Why do you think the Sun will outperform Tyler's Lynx?
So I believe, you get the home field advantage, you're feeling good, and I think they're really an evened out like match.
So for my MVP and I'm just gonna say it, Defensive Player of the Year pick, I have Asia Wilson. And I think she's gonna come away with the MVP, potentially Defensive Player of the Year too.
Okay, I was gonna say, is your selection for MVP or DPOY or MVP and DPOY?
Both.
Both.
I'm saying both.
And welcome back. It is time for our Surefire Pick of the Week, my personal favorite segment. I am wearing my winning jacket, so I did win this week. Big shout out to Frankie Noble, fellow Florida Panthers fan.
You are not a fan of the Panthers.
I am a fan.
You are a bandwagon
I am a fan as of last spring.
That is the definition of a bandwagon.
Okay.
That's when they won the cup. You are a fraud.
I won. Okay, we're just gonna calm that down a little bit. We're gonna really
not
quickly
stand for
go
this.
over the records. Tyler, who's gonna start first, is 1-5. Andrew is still looking for that first win, but I'm gonna let you defend yourself really quickly.
Yeah, so my record is currently 0-6, but I'd like to say that it isn't actually 0-6. And on straight bets, I'm 9-8-1 with one push because Christian McCaffrey got injured. I'm going to give that to myself because I don't want to count that as a loss. So over 18 picks, I do have technically a winning record on straight picks. Combining the parlays has been my issue. I haven't been able to get that right specifically, but if you follow them individually, I would have made you money. So don't take the 0-6 record too harshly. I would like to give out a specific pick that I like today, and then I'll let the parlay kind of speak for itself.
Andrew,
and I hope it hits.
Andrew had this exact same issue. Andrew Montana, when he was here, he hit
It's an Andrew thing.
It was an Andrew thing. 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3
and
every
yet
week.
the name of the game is surefire pick of the week. It's a parlay. So
yeah,
so you know,
maybe be good at that part.
valid argument, but also we got to wrap it up. You know. So
There's
we'll
no
just
need
keep.
for that.
No, well, I wasn't calling you out.
no, it's
but
okay.
but we're as always keeping my fingers crossed. This will be the week. But Tyler, kick us off.
All right, I am sticking with what I know best, and that is Monday Night Football. Tonight, Bills at Jets. I'm going with the Buffalo Bills to win this. Buffalo Bills money line at -130. The Jets are a team that has been kind of inconsistent. They're coming off a loss in London. They got the jet lag a bit there. I'm going with Buffalo, and I'm taking the under for the total points. We're sitting at -40.5. That's at -108. These are two very good defenses, right? The Jets have been outstanding. I know Robert Saleh just got fired, so maybe that'll affect the defensive play calling maybe a bit. The defensive coordinator is the interim, but the Jets' offense has been lackluster overall this season, but their defense is good, so I think that'll keep the Bills' offense in check a bit. And Aaron Rodgers' passing yards, I am going to go under 216.5. I don't like it. It's not a good look for him, I think, at all. That's at -115. He is average. This is below his average, right? So I don't think excuse me, I said under. I meant over. I just realized I can't read. But no, I meant over. This is below his average for the year, which is sitting at around 240. So I think he can still get this. Again, I think we'll see maybe some more yardage from Aaron Rodgers. He seems to be getting comfortable in this Jets offense now a bit, but the scoring is what we'll see limited.
Yeah, so when you said under, I made a major face just because 216 is a pretty low number.
I cannot read.
Granted against the Jets
That is my
defense.
bad.
I also think it's a low number because of the fact that they are probably going to be losing this game for at least a majority of it, or it'll be a competitive game in which both of the offenses are going back and forth. So I would see a game where Aaron Rodgers might have to pass in order for them to stay competitive in this game.
I will say I don't necessarily love the Bills' money line. There's something I feel like, and I hate the Jets, but I hate the Bills more.
I will say this. I did almost pick the Jets because there is this thing in the NFL where an interim coach takes over.
That's my exact
right?
reason. We
And
saw
they
it with
just,
Antonio Pierce last season.
Same with Antonio Pierce. I believe the Panthers had, I forget who took over from Steve Wilkes when he took over for the
man.
Panthers. This happens.
So you're taking a risk, but your
I don't think it'll happen right away, right?
Your total parlay odds are sitting at +537. Pretty good if this hits. But we're gonna move on. Andrew, let's again, fingers crossed. Okay, what is it this week?
Yeah, so this week I'm switching over to hockey, and Nick inspired me since he was able to hit last week on hockey. I'm taking the New Jersey Devils versus the Utah Hockey Club game. And Utah is one of 5 teams in the NHL that still has not had their first loss yet, and I think that ends today. I just don't think that they are the better team in this matchup. New Jersey is sitting at a -200 favorite, which is indicative of that fact because of the fact that they are undefeated, yet they are a crazy underdog relative to the fact that they are undefeated. The New Jersey Devils are just frankly the better team, which is why they're sitting at -200. I also think that the over is going to hit because of the fact that Utah has scored at least 5 goals in each of their 3 games so far. They had 6 goals one game, and they've had 5 the other 2 games. So they have been an offensive juggernaut throughout the first 3 games. And New Jersey, obviously, if they want to keep up with, I have New Jersey winning. So if they were to keep up with Utah, they would have to score a lot of goals. So over 6 in this game is sitting at -160. And then I also have the New Jersey Devils to be the first team to score, which is sitting at -135. It's a little bit of a riskier prop, but I think that if they are to get out to a fast start, they'll win the game. So it's kind of all correlated. I want a lot of goals. I want a fast start by New Jersey, and that's kind of all I have.
Yeah, I will say those first two picks I like a lot. Okay.
I appreciate it.
I will say the third leg is slightly risky just because you never know. And you did mention how high scoring Utah has been. So I think that one could be a risk. Maybe you could have taken like Paul Cotters over on points. He's been pretty good this season. I picked him up in HTF Fantasy Hockey. But I like it overall. And your total parlays odds are sitting at plus 325, which, again, is pretty good odds.
As long as you like it, I'm happy because you seem to be the guru at this.
Oh,
and,
I appreciate it.
as
Let's
you,
not go too far.
As you mentioned, I can't seem to put it together. So,
but maybe this is the week.
Maybe it is. You guys didn't seem too confident.
I like the over on goals a lot. I'll say that. And so I mentioned your total parlay odds, how they're pretty good. I'm a little bit ashamed to admit my total parlay odds. They are not sitting very good. It is sitting at plus 175. That's not good at all. I know. Don't clown me, okay? But I'm talking about tonight's Yankees-Cleveland game. Game 1 of the ALCS in MLB playoffs. Kicking off at 7:38 p.m., which is a weird time. But first leg is going to be Yankees money line. They were my pick to win the World Series a couple weeks ago on bets, and I think that's going to stand strong. Top 5 record in all of MLB. And then I'm taking an alternate line on Carlos Rodon's strikeouts. Now, the line was 5.5. That isn't necessarily even all that high, but his last 5 games, he had 9 in his last game. 5 games ago, he had 7. But then after the 7, he followed it up with 5, 4, and 5. So my thought process is like, okay, so he'll have one good game, and then kind of some stinkers, kind of like he might not hit 5, or 6 actually. So that's my thought process behind that. That's sitting at minus 365, so it's very likely to happen because it is only 3.5 strikeouts. And then lastly, I'm taking Giancarlo Stanton to have a hit in that game. There's some big names on that Yankees team, including Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, but Stanton's been the most consistent. He has had hits in all of the last 3 games and multiple in 2 of those games, unlike Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. So that's my pick. It's very unfavorable odds. It's not great, but a win would be a win. And also, 3 is the record for a semester at bets.
We're on a few record watches actually. So you have the most wins in a semester now is 3 here with Nick.
Yep.
The most wins all time by a single host in their career is 4. The most wins combined from all the hosts during a semester is 5.
Okay.
And then so that one we're at 4, so we can get that one. And then another big record on the watch is most consecutive losses, which is sitting at 8, held by Andrew Montana. So
why are we watching out for that one? I don't understand.
I don't know.
I'm gonna hit this week.
Hopefully,
I also want to say that I picked the Yankees last week,
time.
And I picked the only game that they lost, which was very unfortunate. And I also chose Juan Soto to get a hit, who had been a very consistent hitter and one of their best hitters in the regular season, and it just didn't happen. So I am tending to stay away from the Yankees at this point, but I don't hate it.
I think you're cursed. That's my theory.
Yeah, that might be it.
So you're saying that I'm learning from others' mistakes?
No,
who to pick?
I'm saying that I hate the segment.
Okay, that's fair. I love it. That is going to be it for this week's episode. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for another great show.
I'm going to the NFL season opener.